Hello YouTube, I have something a little different today. I am basically having to learn how to do invasions all over again after the DLC came out. What with all of the crazy new DLC weapons, including the one that I like using, Milady, the light greatsword. I absolutely love this thing, but it has noticeable holes in its ability to invade. In the arena, this thing is probably pretty good, but in invasions where you're fighting 2 and sometimes 3 people, if any one of those 2 or 3 people is capable of spamming any type of like projectile at you while you're trying to have a sword fight, like, you know, with any of the other, you know, occupants, contestants, what's the word I'm looking for? Co-opers. It is just a pain, man, to try and figure out, like, how you are supposed to engage somebody while you have to compete with, you know, projectiles being chucked at you the whole time. And so I have started using a bow as like a soft swap that I can switch to in case I have to deal with some people shooting lasers. And this entire video is just 2 invasions. It is full of people shooting lasers at me, and basically making it really hard for me to, you know, get moments like that. I'm okay with like the 2v1 or even the 3v1 in situations where I can like turn the tide pretty quickly on people, thanks to that heavy attack on Milady. That rules. But in these situations where they are capable of hitting me at range, you know, Milady has nothing. So I've started using Ansbach's bow, as well as the bone bow. Is that what it's called? I think so. The one you get in the Scorpion room in Bellerot, however you pronounce that. I've been using like both of those, kind of like bouncing back and forth. Those bows are just absolutely disgusting in regards to like how they stack up to the bows that were in the base game. Some of the bows in the base game were like pretty good, and some of the Ashes of War on some of those bows were pretty good, but the new bows are just absolutely like head and shoulders better. And they've nerfed the bows a little bit. I think they nerfed the status build-up, but like they're still absolutely bonkers with the status build-up, especially the bone bow. The fact that it has that Ash of War that allows you to just keep firing forever, and the arrows now have tracking on the Ash of War. Combine that with like frostbite or, you know, whatever, and you've got a pretty gnarly ranged weapon capable of putting real damage on people. And that's, you know, not to even speak of the talisman swaps you could pull off to really maximize the damage on that. And so I've been learning how to, you know, be a little more picky about when it's jar cannon time and when it's bow time. Keeping, you know, I love the jar cannon. I will always love the jar cannon, but I found myself getting in trouble sometimes because I would equip the jar cannon thinking that my opponents were far enough away that I could take a shot and then swap back and, you know, save myself in time. And so many times I was wrong, and I end up just absolutely eating ass because my opponents were able to get up on me faster than I anticipated that they would be. So the jar cannon, the ballista, whatever, like those are really good weapons for, you know, like long range. But for that medium range, where people just stand right outside of like your medium range, and you know, they chuck bombs or arrows or spells or whatever, and you have to sit there and compete with that. It's difficult. But the bow kind of like removes a lot of that difficulty, because now you have something that you can just soft swap to, and, you know, worst case scenario, somebody gets up on you and you can just roll away. Like I'm not fat rolling because of the bow like I am when I swapped the jar cannon. Obviously I could, like, you know, put some points into endurance or whatever, but since I'm trying to stay around meta level and run a quality build, which is like not a great choice, I just don't have the points to move into endurance if I'm gonna, you know, run this. And thankfully the bows aren't, you know, that heavy, and having a bow that you can soft swap to definitely helps. Look at that. I mean, like, that's real damage, you know? Like, that's real damage. It scared our opponent. The high page came in with the assist, freaked him out, and, you know, he fell off the elevator, and now we have one less co-opper in the world. I mean, just instant difference that it makes having that bow as like a sort of mid-range option that allows you to safely put damage on people without over-committing, because that's the problem with Milady. Like, in an actual, like, melee fight, in a sword fight, Milady has an answer for everything, and it's beautiful and wonderful, and as long as you're executing properly, like, you know, Milady is, the light greatswords in general, you know, they have an answer for everything, and as long as you're executing, like, they'll hold their own. And it rules. They're like the perfect sweet spot between a straight sword and a great sword. But there are times when neither of those is the right answer. And it is typically when you are playing with somebody at that mid-range. And having, you know, a bow with an Ash of War that can just boom, you know, here's 500 damage, here's 600 damage. Like, that's something that they have to, like, seriously, you know, pay attention to. And it's also probably something that, like, you know, they're not expecting. You're probably not expecting to eat that much damage off of a bow. So it absolutely opens things up and allows me to have these moments where I'm actually getting to fight people with the sword, because we were able to get rid of one of the phantoms with the bow. And so, like, this invasion perfectly encapsulates, like, why the bow got added to the build. It's interesting that I never felt like I had to do this when I was playing with the straight sword, but that's probably because, like, 90% of my straight sword builds all had left-hand magic, and be that, you know, Glintstone Stars, or Giant's Flame Take Thee, or Cannon of Hyma, or Blood Boon, like, there was always something that you could do to people who were standing in that mid-range. And Milady, for whatever reason, on a quality build, I don't have any of that, and it really hurts. And like I've said in other videos, you could probably equip some sort of ranged Ash of War. You know, there's several Ashes of War that will give you a ranged projectile attack. But I just love Wing Stance so much that I refuse to get rid of it. It's some of, like, when you get, like, the Wing Stance fights going on, where you're able to whiff punish with the light attack Wing Stance, and then you're able to, like, you know, land big counter hits. with the heavy attack. Like, that's the most satisfying feeling in Invasions for me. So there's just no way I'm gonna like replace that with Stormblade or whatever the new fire one is from the DLC. I'm just not gonna do it. I refuse to give this up. But I say this like I have other builds that, you know, like I have a few different builds that were like mainly sword and shield focused, but a lot of those builds would have stuff on them like spears or glaives or halberds, stuff that, you know, had hyper armor, like good hyper armor, colossal swords or great hammers or something. And with those builds, you know, you have an option to like take a hit and it's not necessarily the end of the world because you're still swinging your weapon because of hyper armor. But, you know, Milady, the light greatswords, they can't do that. I don't know that they have hyper armor. If they do, it's not much. But the holes in the weapon, to me, are worth learning around because of how fun it is. But yeah, look at that, 638 damage on a ranged attack that our opponent has to heal off. And in the time that our opponent had to heal that off, we were able to fight this other guy. And like, that's Invasions in a nutshell. That's essentially, you want to hit one guy, and while they back off to heal, now you can hit this other guy. That's, you know, like, that's where you find the time to deal with, you know, one guy, and then the next, and then the next. And if it's 3 guys, obviously that's like a whole other scenario. But in the case like this where it's 2 dudes, and they're just sort of like coming at you in waves, and they don't come at you all at once as often, you know, that's the play, is to just find the time, hit one, and make that one play that gets the other guy to back off and heal so that you can hit the other guy. And like, that's how you win, is you're basically outplaying 2 people. And as long as you have, you know, as long as you're calm and cool and collected, it's easy to do that against players even who like know what they're doing. Because if there's a chance that they're freaking out more than you are, and you're the one who's like able to keep cool, you can absolutely take advantage of that and come out on top. And a lot of the times, you know, co-opers or gankers or whatever the case may be, they just don't expect an invader to be able to pull something like that off. And so when you start pulling it off, they spiral because they're just not expecting you to be able to hold your own. And then in situations like this, where you actually have some enemies that can maybe help you out for a second, you know, that's a total game changer. But unfortunately for us, I'm pretty sure we're in base new game at meta level in one of the early game dungeons. So those dudes were just not gonna amount to much. And whenever you're invading, that's something to be weary of. Like, you know, take stock of your surroundings. This is an early game dungeon. This is in Liurnia. Even if this is New Game Plus, these enemies aren't going to be worth a damn. In New Game Plus, from Limgrave up until the Giants Mountaintops of Giants, New Game Plus is literally just a, what do you call it? Like a victory lap, you know? Stuff starts getting tough again around the Mountaintops of Giants. That's where stuff becomes dangerous. Enemies will actually do damage. They actually have health. You know, and then like Pharaoh Mazula and now the DLC. Things like that in New Game Plus, that's real. But like a dungeon in Liurnia or a dungeon in Weeping Peninsula or Limgrave or whatever, like, you know, make sure that you're paying attention to your surroundings and not expecting the enemies to carry the invasion, because they're just not going to. And some people are not into these like slow, drawn-out invasions, but I am. I love this. You know, Elden Ring will kind of let you play however you want when it comes to invasions. If you wanted to run in here poised up with, you know, some one-shot type Ash of War, you know, you absolutely could do that. But that's not as fun for me as this is. Finally landing that parry, finally getting the host one-on-one. Love that. And that bow allowing us to play at mid-range and not be at such a disadvantage, absolutely clutch. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Till then, later, y'all.